to Turf Wars Season 4, Episode 9. I think I did have to just check that, and I've already forgotten. Episode 9. I'm going with that. This week, we're going to be talking about loads of different stuff. There's loads of news happening, and it's not all necessarily related. It's kind of jumping all over the place. But we're going to be talking about some grim stuff that's happening in the USA. We're going to be talking more about the EHRC at the end of the episode. And we're also going to be talking to a non-binary person who is suing the British government in order to try and get non-binary on their all their legal documents, basically. And I know we've petitioned for that before, and there is currently actually a Supreme Court case, or I think it's a European Court of Human Rights case going on about that from a British citizen who was born in Britain. But this is like a different angle. It's going to be interesting. I think that this has a real chance of at least causing a right fucking mess for the bullshit fascist government we have today. So that's exciting, and that'll be interesting to hear about. We've also got a little bit of a spoiler. Our dickhead of the week this week is Graham Linehan. He could be the dickhead of any week, but I'll go into it more later. But we're going to cover his... I nearly called him her then. Sorry for accidentally misgendering you, Graham. We're going to cover his top 5 Twitter blunders of all time, in my opinion, which should be some fun antics in the middle of the show. Yeah, should be a good time. Hopefully the sound sounds good, because I had a bit of sound issues earlier in the week, which we'll mention later on in the episode. There is a little small section of like Katie themed news at the end, and we're going to cover that then. So if you're wondering what I'm talking about, hang around for that. It should be good. But yeah, there is actually loads to get through. I've cut so much out this week. Like I always go through the last week's worth of stuff, like I keep a list, and there was like 50 things this week, and I've cut it down to like 15 or maybe not 20, but I like to ramble. I'm rambling already. Anyway, let's just get going. Unfortunately, the first bit of news is bad news, but let's start with the news. So we're going to start with this garbage news, and I'm really sorry for anyone in Missouri watching this, because this would absolutely terrify me. Basically, this is an article from Vice. Gender-affirming care or trans healthcare is banned for adults and children in Missouri, which is a state in the USA, just pretty much completely. The headline does say basically, and we'll go into that in a sec, but in effect, it's banned for most people. And it's one of these, you often see this with LGBT legislation. They try and write it vaguely so that they can just pitch it as reasonable. But it's written in a way that anyone who's actually affected by it, it's so vague that it probably covers everyone. And so it kind of creates this culture of fear, like we saw with Section 28 in the UK. But this is really proper grim. And so it says, Missouri is the first state to severely restrict gender-affirming care for transgender adults amid a nationwide GOP's, it stands for Grand Old Party, it's another word for the Republicans, push to legislate away trans rights. And this is a good summary of it, so we'll start with this. So the Attorney General said, I will always fight to protect children because gender transition interventions are experimental. So then Vice very correctly says, science actually supports gender-affirming care and it's not experimental. Good to see news outlets actually just bothering to do journalism. So this Attorney General says, my office is stepping up to protect children throughout the state while we investigate the allegations and how they are harming children. Bailey added, the medical consensus in the US, including endorsements from the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the Endocrine Society, is that gender-affirming care, which includes name changes, puberty blockers, and hormone replacement therapy, is safe, effective, and medically necessary. So that pretty much just sums up the whole thing. It's total garbage. Notice how he's just constantly talking about children, but this actually applies to everyone. It's a hard, just total ban for anyone under 18. But it says here, so people seeking such care will have to be screened for autism and other pre-existing issues, such as anxiety or depression. And pre-existing conditions must have been treated and resolved before a person can access gender-affirming care. So, like, this is how they always write their laws. They're like, oh, no, we're just worried about, other things which may cause confusion. And then all the centrists are like, oh, that does sound fair. We don't want confusion. We've got to make sure that what if someone is depressed and that has somehow made them think they're trans? So we've got to cure that first. But the reality is, I mean, first of all, you cannot cure or resolve autism or lots of other underlying conditions. Lots of conditions that people have, which can be mental health issues or just conditions of who they are as a person, can't be treated and resolved. Like, the treatment and resolution for a lot of autistic people is let them fucking live their life without being a dickhead to them. But obviously that isn't how they'll sell this. They'll say, oh, you show some symptoms of autism, therefore you cannot have healthcare as a trans person. But also banning it, like, if you haven't resolved your depression. Like, it's like saying, oh yeah, you can only have a paracetamol or a headache tablet if your headache is already resolved. Because depression and anxiety are caused by being trans and being denied healthcare and being blocked being able to transition. Like, that's a very common conditions that we see in trans people before they're able to transition, or when they have transitioned and they're in a garbage environment where they're then made homeless, or all kinds of other things. And you might see a situation where a trans person comes out, is kicked out of their house, disowned by their family, obviously is then depressed by that, and then is banned from having healthcare until that's resolved, when the only resolution is healthcare. So it's just one of these catch-22 bullshit things, and they know they're doing this. Like, it's easy to think these, it's the classic, are they stupid or malicious? And you're like, most people are stupid. This is planned. Like, they would have had people planning this in order to restrict it in the most aggressive, restricting way possible, but to, at the same time, make it vague so that it will sell to the general population. It's just disgusting. Like, it says here, they even have to check that you're not suffering from social media addiction. I mean, I think probably I am suffering from social media addiction, but that's since coming out as trans, not beforehand. So, but yeah, like, so Erin, who's a really great activist, says, this is what the elimination of transgender people looks like. And she's right. I mean, this is, I mean, people are kind of not ever sure where to use the word genocide. But if you ban all healthcare from all trans people, and you start banning them from the toilets and public spaces, and you remove all of their legal protections, it's clear that you're just trying to create a world without trans people in it. And that's what the genocide of trans people will look like. I mean, I'm sure lots of people would like to round us all up in camps and, do an old school classic genocide, but they don't need to, because we have so little political power. They can just ban all our healthcare and then ban us from going into public spaces, and then what can we do? We're just totally fucked. So, yeah, and it's an emergency rule. I saw some people pointing out on Twitter that, like, Missouri's got multiple major crises going on at the moment, like the standard of living and, even still dealing with COVID stuff. And the emergency rule they put in hasn't to deal with any of that. It's not to get people off the streets or to feed children. It's to take healthcare away from 0.3% of the population. Ridiculous. And then the article also I highlighted this because it's just good to see articles actually doing their, journalists doing their job, which Vice seems to consistently do on trans issues. Teens who are able to access gender-affirming therapy typically also have better mental health outcomes than trans people who have to wait until adulthood to transition, which is just, factually true and common sense at the same time. But so this is a letter, and this is like, I really feel for people in Missouri, and I'm sorry that you're like the cutting edge of this, and I think other states are going to see this, and other countries even. I mean, obviously some countries have been like this for ages, but some countries are moving towards this kind of taking things away that we already had. And this is just like my ultimate nightmare. So this is a letter from a doctor to a person who's been censored here. And they're just basically saying, I'll not be able to fulfill your prescriptions. I'm not able to defend my license under the law. I recommend, getting as much stockpile as you possibly can. And if this rule is overturned, then I will help you as soon as I can. Just absolutely horrifying. I mean, yeah, nightmare. The gender criticals in the UK did actually manage to ban my private healthcare provider for like 3 months once. And that was just horrific. Like, you just like, well, I need this healthcare to live. And it's now, illegal for me? I just didn't have access to it. And, people using that service, at least in the UK, we were able to work around it. I managed to get some sourced from Europe. Some other people were managed to switch to other private healthcare providers. But if the state just came in and banned it, completely public and private, it's just disgusting. But it's not just disgusting about healthcare, because these fucking people are never just anti-trans. They're always absolutely disgusting, and they're always trying to do it, like, say they're protecting kids, and they're always trying to say they're protecting women, and they're always the most pro-child abuse, disgusting, misogynist shitheads that you've ever heard. And here is an example. So this is reported by Brian Tyler Cohen. Unfortunate initials because it looks like the Bitcoin thing. So he's just saying here, a Democrat called out the Missouri senator about, like, related to this healthcare bill, because the healthcare, basically, one of the things that Republicans and generally the kind of cultural right has been arguing for the last couple of decades is they're pro-freedom and pro-parental rights and parents and kids making the decisions together for their own lives and against big government meddling. And obviously this is literally the opposite of that. So lots of people are pointing that out. And this guy uses a really disgusting example, and it gets even worse. So let's listen to what this absolute fucking piece of shit has to say.
I've heard you talk about parents' rights to raise their kids how they want. In fact, I just double-checked. You voted no on making it illegal for kids to be married to adults at the age of 12 if their parents consented to it. You said, actually, that should be the law because it's the parents' right and the kids' right to decide what's best for them, to be raped by an adult. Okay?
Do you know any kids who have been
With
married
marriage.
at age 12?
That was the law. You voted not to change it.
Do you know any kids who have been married at age 12?
I don't need to.
I do. And guess what? They're still married.
Gentlemen.
Absolutely fucking sick. Like, saying, oh, yeah, the parents and the kids should be able to make the decision for themselves, as if it's some kind of negotiation between two equal parties, when in all cases like this, if you're marrying off your 12-year-old, you don't have the best interests for any children at heart. You're an absolute piece of shit who sees children, most of the time girls, as just property, like cattle, or worse, in a way that you wouldn't even treat a dog, selling them off, like the Democrat points out, to be raped by an adult in almost all of these cases. And he's just like, yeah, well, they're still married. Like, well, of course they're still married. This girl has been, they overuse the word grooming, but this is the literal most purest sense of it. Effectively just kidnapped and held as like a sex slave. And he wants that. And he's used the very argument kids and adults should be able to negotiate, and it's worked out fine for everyone involved, which obviously isn't true, but like that whole fucking argument is what they've been saying about all this disgusting stuff. It's how they take their hands off the wheel, like, oh, we're not saying that's a good thing that adults rape children. It's just we're saying the parents know best. Apart from when the entire international medical community recommends transition, then suddenly the parents don't know best. The doctors don't know best. The science doesn't matter. It's just the only way you can sum these people up is pro-patriarchy. I mean, they want everyone to fit into a box. They want girls to be, and women to be, property, and they want men to hold a dominant social position. And that explains all of these things. Like, it's the only consistent belief they actually hold. They don't care about freedom or parents' right, none of that. They don't. Literally, they'll say whatever they can in order to justify patriarchy. Got a couple of comments from GCs here. I thought this one was worth pointing out. We won't spend too long on it, but they basically realized in real time that they're just defending patriarchy. So they're like, marriage for 12-year-olds is fucking grim. Good. I'm glad you think that. You are not, that's not a unanimous GC position, as we will see in a second. But unrelated to banning mutilation and sterilization of children. That's what they call trans healthcare, because they want to make it sound as bad as they can, because their only actual argument is it sounds bad, because they obviously don't have the science. But then they're like, oh, well, it's actually congruent when you think about it. No point marrying a 12-year-old girl except because you expect her to be fertile and compliant, which doesn't apply to many trans kids. Compliant, I mean, LGBT people, I mean, maybe that's not the best way to describe it. LGBT people are often more likely to be vulnerable to being groomed by these fucking sickos. And at 12-year-old, no trans kid's going to be infertile at that stage, because that's like the absolute earliest they would ever start puberty blockers, unless you had precocious puberty. Anyway, they were just kind of, oh, well, it kind of does make sense, actually. Like, in the same trip, but they're like, totally unrelated, but, oh, actually, that does sound like patriarchy. Oh, what a surprise. But anyway, at least this GC is anti-child marriage, because this one, our friend, from the first episode of Season 4 of Turf Wars, go back and watch if you want to see the cringiest marriage vows you've ever seen in your life. This is Mr. I do take you to be my adult human male civil partner. So he came in saying that something dubious. So I just wanted a clarification. You can go look at the whole conversation. It's still on Twitter. I said, so do you want them to make child marriage illegal in Missouri or not? And he says, not. This isn't out of context. This isn't edited. This is his actual position. And it kind of actually is consistent with his other positions, because Alex thinks, he just supports patriarchy. But he's in a gay civil partnership, and they specifically, the pair of them chose civil partnership because they believe marriage is between a man and a woman. So it's all this kind of traditional, Christian fascist patriarchy awfulness. But anyway, we got a little update. This is our second news item of the week, which is also disgusting. Sorry, no good news at the start of the show. Under new Conservative guidance, schools are going to be forced to out trans and non-binary children to their parents. Under guidance that's been described as dangerous and is just, trivially dangerous. Here's dickhead in charge of our country at the moment. So, new guidance from the UK's Conservative government will see teachers forced to out trans and non-binary and gender non-conforming pupils, worth noting, to their parents, and ban trans children from using changing rooms and shower facilities, of course. Although there is expected to be an exception for children Although there is an exception for children believed to be at risk of significant harm at home, young people exploring their gender will be informed on to parents against their will, which could have devastating consequences. Whether or not the school has marked these children at risk of harm in their family setting. Yeah, exactly. Schools aren't aware of what's going on all the time, lots of the time. We've got some from experts down below. A number of triggers for schools being compelled to inform parents are mentioned, including the child changing their name. So, like, taking a nickname? It could potentially even be like just a name that coincidentally is gender neutral. And then suddenly the school's like forced to say, we suspect your kid is trans, which, that could be terrible for a cis kid as well. Including a boy wearing a skirt. So this is just policing gender roles. The Sunday Times quotes, the main transphobic newspaper in the country, quotes a source saying, even wearing a skirt to school, using a different name, of all those things, are consequential. They are not neutral. They are actually neutral. Wearing a boy or a girl wearing a skirt or trousers are both neutral things to do. Changing your name is neutral in a morally neutral sense. I understand why some parents might not like it if you changed your name, but I don't really care. But why can't a boy wear a skirt to school? That doesn't mean they're trans. It doesn't mean anything. But if they just want to wear a skirt and they have to like bring it into school secretly, and then they're outed to their abusive parents who might to the school appear normal and nice. I mean, they could lose their life over that in the most extreme cases, but or could just suffer bullying and child abuse. I mean, it's horrific. There's just no excuse for this. No one benefits from this because the way this is often presented is like schools are secretly convincing kids to be that's obviously like trivially bullshit. But the next, like the most reasonable presentation of this is like, oh well, if you're a parent, you'd want to know if your kid was LGBT. Like, yeah, I would want to know. I would want to know if my kid was LGBT. So what I would do is I would tell my kid from the earliest that they're able to understand it, if they did end up LGBT, I would love and support them. And then when they found out that they were LGBT, they would tell me in their own time. That is how I resolve the problem. You know, if I'd be like, oh, I really want to know if my kid is left-handed. Therefore, I'll make it clear that if my kid starts using the left hand, that's fine. I wouldn't be like, you have to use your right hand because it's the only way to be normal. And if the teacher sees you using the left hand, then I need to know about it. Because that just means you're a shit parent. Of course, Keir Starmer also said the same thing because he's a fucking dickhead. So Matt Adams, head of department at a West London state school, says, teachers and schools do not have all the information about every child's home environment, and instead of supporting a pupil to be themselves in school, we could be putting them at risk. It's dangerous behaviour. It is not solving a problem, it is creating a problem. We have another quote from someone, like, you know, these are people who actually deal with LGBT kids rather than the out of touch losers making this policy just based on a fear of trans people. So Lucas, I'm not even going to attempt your second name, I'm sorry, Executive Director of the Mosaic LGBTQ Young Persons Trust, so someone who actually knows what they're talking about, said there is usually a reason why a child hasn't told their parents about their gender identity. I wonder what that reason is. I mean, maybe they don't know that yet. Maybe they're not ready. I mean, not every time a kid doesn't tell their parents it's because they have abusive parents. Lots of the time it's because they trust their friends the most, or they are still experimenting, and it's easy to experiment with your friends than with your parents, which it might still be a big deal even if ultimately they'll be supportive. Such guidance would put a lot of trans and non-binary students at risk. There's usually a reason why they don't tell their parents. Family rejection is a huge risk, leading to the young person entering already stretched care system, and in the worst case scenario, so-called honor-based violence. And they point out that there's absolutely no reason why any school should have open plan changing rooms or showers at all. We had them at my school. They were absolute nightmare. Someone got beaten up in the changing rooms literally every single day that we had to go in there. And no one ever showered because no one would get naked in front of each other because we were teenagers. I mean, that applied to all the cis boys as well. So just out of date garbage, nonsense attempt at a solution to a problem that is solved in a different way. It's just complete fucking garbage. Get fucked. I've sworn a lot this episode. We're now going to move on to our third news item, and the one that we are going to have a guest for. So we are going to be discussing a legal challenge which urges the government to give legal recognition to non-binary people. So let's bring on our guest. So hopefully we will have Ryan, who is at the center of this case, who I'll bring in as soon as they have got their camera loaded up. Oh, it's loading up now. Okay, right. So let's bring them in. Hello, Ryan. How are you?
Hi.
Thanks very much for coming on the show. So basically, you're a non-binary person who wasn't born in England or the UK, and so you're from somewhere with some like kind of decent laws, and you've already got non-binary on your birth certificate. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And in fact, it literally says non-binary on it. It's not just an X. It literally says non-binary, and all of my other documents from the US do as well. My passport, my driving license, have this like trusted traveler program card that finally sent me one with an X on it after sending me it took them 3 tries. But
Okay,
they got it right
you got there?
eventually. Yeah.
So you're from California, is that right?
California.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So obviously the USA seems pretty wacky from an English perspective. We just kind of have like 4 different things here, but you have like 50 different ones. So it's hard to keep track because we just covered Missouri, basically banning trans people from existing. And then in California, you're way ahead of the UK and have, well, non-binary legal recognition and some other things. But so you've then chosen to live in the UK, and the UK law both bans and compels you to get legal recognition here, something like that. So what's the situation you're in?
That's the thing. It doesn't ban it, as
Well,
far as anyone can tell.
yeah. So
They just keep saying it does, and after I moved here and started transitioning, I looked into it, and there's all these places where the government says legally you must be male or female. Okay, where does it say that? And I never got an answer. And so, like, I looked at the Gender Recognition Act, and it has no such restriction.
right.
And in fact, it makes it very clear that it recognizes foreign genders. Without
It's a good way of
any
describing
list
it.
of which ones that is. So I talked to some lawyers. They agreed that I had a point, and we got a gender recognition certificate application filed. And goodness, that was a year ago.
Okay, so I'm just turning your audio up. Hopefully everyone will be able to hear you a little better now. It's all right. I think it was okay. It was just a little quiet. I'll just turn it up a bit more. Yeah, so basically, you already got the documents in California, and then you came here, and then the UK government's laws kind of say that you should just be recognized. I mean, there are lots. It's worth pointing out that internationally, there are all kinds of different views of gender, and like we were talking just before the show about how in India they have like 3 recognition categories, and you can get an E on your passport in India, which I think might stand for eunuch, which isn't necessarily how I would describe things.
So I am not sure, but I think there are 4 gender options that India puts on their passports.
Okay.
But or maybe it's another country that I know there's at least one country that has 4 options.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's X and E in some places, but I think that what's important here is this is international law, and the UK has subscribed to this for ages. Like the International Convention on Passports has always had X as an option that any country can issue. But importantly, even if the country chooses itself internally not to issue X, they have to process and be able to deal with X from every other country that might do that. And then any other, you're allowed to have other categorizations as well. So that means the UK is already dealing with this. Like, it's already a thing they do. And then, like you say, the Gender Recognition Act makes it clear that I think it says somewhere in this press release that you kind of have to apply for a gender recognition certificate, or you have to notify them. But then they say,
well, so there's So if you have a visa in the UK, you're obliged within 90 days to notify them of a change of circumstance, which includes a change of gender. But they have no idea what a change of gender, like they could not tell me what a change of gender means.
right.
So I applied when I got my birth certificate, And then they're like, well, the birth certificate doesn't count. Like, okay. But this time, though, I had applied for my passport in the U.S. early because apparently they were accepting passport applications early, and I had a couple trips to the embassy in London, and I finally got them to accept my application. So I told the UK visas and immigrations folks that, well, I've applied for the new passport, and it's supposed to be here pretty soon, so let's just hold my application. And then I get the passport. It's got the X on it, and they're like, okay, well, we can print M or F on there.
Yeah, and I think
And
this is like one of those
and
cases where people just are idiots and they don't know, and then someone somewhere in the system is telling them they can't do it, even if the law does say. Just seems like a nightmare.
yeah, and I've also looked at some other UK laws, like the birth and death registration law doesn't seem to be limited to male and female either.
Yes.
They keep complaining about how complicated this would be, and I think they're just kind of exaggerating because they don't really know. They haven't looked. And the passport case that got decided December 2021. The government's position was basically we don't want to because it would cost £2 million to update our systems. And then, from what I understand, they spent about £20 million on the blue passports thing.
Yeah.
And
they don't care. It's just a crap excuse, and
it's ridiculous.
The birth and deaths registry thing's interesting. So there's a quote, I think, from you in this, which says that NHS England has over 100,000 people registered as indeterminate rather than male or female. I mean, I guess in their birth certificate. And the UK government has
not on their birth certificate. They're NHS medical records.
Oh, okay. So
I filed a freedom of information request and got that back fairly recently, and they told me as of I think March of this year they had over 100,000, just over 100,000 people who were listed on their NHS medical records as indeterminate.
Yeah, which is like, I mean, it just shows that, I understand the argument, it will cost some money to update our systems. It's like, okay, but do you really think that like Ryan here is going to be the last non-binary person not born in the UK who comes, like, you're going to have to update them. Like, they're just wrong.
Yeah.
And 2 million sounds like a lot of money, but it's actually not when it comes to government stuff. You're going to have to update the system anyway, unrelated to this, as time goes on and security changes and stuff. Yeah,
it's I mean, it really is. I see it as an inevitability.
Yeah, me too.
Other countries are making these changes. They aren't really having any problems as far as I've looked. I have not found any reports of serious problems with countries updating their systems to accommodate more than two genders. And the UK's passport, like my ex passport from the States works just fine on the automated passport control gates when I fly into the country.
Because the system already handles it. Yeah. Because it has to, and it has for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so nonsense. And like, there's a thing up here that I highlighted as well where it says, like, you had difficulty undergoing a background check for a job.
Oh yeah, because it's a criminal offense to put false information on the form, and the government doesn't seem to know what my legal gender is, and I don't know, and I tried asking, and they're like, "Go away."
They really don't want this, because I mean, I think this kind of go away attitude is probably has worked for them in the past, because what trans person has been able to cause a fuss and raise enough money and go through the court system and have backings from lawyers, but the reality is that what do they have to stand on here? Like, all of your documents say this. The laws that they've already written pretty much do say this.
I'm not asking them to change the law. The law already allows for this.
And most of their systems already cover this, like the NHS, the passport checks, driving license, everything already can. It's just going to be in a few things written in the 90s, which have a little drop-down menu or radio buttons or something, which isn't going to be hard to update. It just seems like utter nonsense. And this is like, obviously, like when I saw your case, I was like, oh, this is great. It's always good to see a trans person suing the UK government. It's one of my favorite news announcements, but it was also really good that because I've seen I can't remember their name now, but the case you mentioned earlier of
Elan Kane.
Yeah, Elan, who sued the government and lost at various stages and has taken it to the European Court of Human Rights, where I think they might win, but it's hard to know because the European Court of Human Rights is going to review it based on right to private life, and they'll decide whether it, like, they feel it causes an inconvenience. But your case here seems to be more straightforward, where you're just like, well, this is the law, and I already
follow the law.
Can you follow your own laws, please? So I mean,
there are also, of course, civil rights claims here.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, this is a simple matter of administrative law. Like, the law says they're supposed to recognize me, and I want them to do it.
Case closed. So
Yeah.
just stop being ridiculous. I mean, obviously the main reason here, and I think it's just clear to everyone, is ideological. It doesn't matter how much it costs. It doesn't matter how much. It's not really difficult. They don't want to acknowledge non-binary people because it's a culture war thing. So
the inequalities minister has decided to, like, be involved in my case. The government has literally their best, most expensive lawyer fighting me. Like, it's like, I just want a gender recognition certificate. Like,
yeah, it's more important to them and they'll spend. It's like recently we saw last week. I can't remember which state it was, but one state government spent like $20 million or something fighting against giving a single employee healthcare, and then lost and had to pay the healthcare anyway. It's the ideological thing that they're fighting for rather than the actual cost.
It really is, and it's just kind of. I mean, this is an atrocious waste of resources all around. Like, I have better things I could be doing. The government has better things that they could be doing aside from fighting me. They're going to have to make these changes. They're going to have to make these changes eventually, and I'm not going away.
Exactly. I mean, obviously the current government is kind of on its last legs, but I thought I'd also point out that although this kind of seems open and shut, and we both sound kind of confident about this, you still need this case funding.
Oh my goodness, my lawyers are expensive. Oh my goodness. Like, they are very, very good.
Yeah.
And very, very expensive. And I've already incurred over 50,000 in costs.
Okay.
Which I am on the hook for. And I'm trying to get this offset with the crowdfunding.
So if anyone can spare £1 to donate, this potentially, see, like, the reason, like, we're saying it's ideological for them, but in a way this is kind of ideological for us too, obviously, on the pro-trans rights side, because if they issue just one non-binary gender recognition certificate, it's going to be very hard for them to not issue a second one. So that's obviously why they're going to fight it so hard, and why they probably, I think the Conservatives will probably be prepared to break the law. I mean, they'll just say no, and then you have to.
They already are breaking the law.
Yeah.
Like, they granted my gender recognition certificate. I applied, they granted it. I have an official letter that says they granted it. The law very clearly says that they have to issue it if they grant it, and they have not issued it, so like they're already in violation of the law. Like,
So
like granting the application and then not issuing it is not a thing they're allowed to do.
yeah, so like in a sense, I know that it could seem like, well, we're up against a fucking criminal party who don't give a shit about the law at all, but they do have to fold to someone like this. The law system, whilst not being perfect, does achieve things, and I think this personally, not legal advice, I think this is this case has legs, and I will be donating. And if you feel like non-binary people should have recognition in this country, this is a good place to go. If you want to donate. And also on this, what you can do, here is a petition. Both the crowdfund and the petition link are below in the description. Still short not even on 8,000 signatures. Getting this to 10,000, and they have to respond, and they will respond saying, we're not going to do it, it's too complicated and expensive. And then we'll get it to 100,000, and then they still will ignore it, but it shows them how much like force there is behind this and how much money they will have to spend. If they tell Ryan to fuck off, then another non-binary person could just do the same thing, and then they'll have to waste another load of money on that. And eventually,
I'll do it again.
Good.
I'll find another way to do it again. Like, sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead. It's good to hear.
Yeah, you know, I'm can be a wee bit stubborn. I spent 2 years in a protracted argument with British Airways to get the title on my frequent flyer account updated to MX, because they have like 30 or 40 different titles in there. And actually at one point I got ordained as a minister through the Universal Life Church in the States out of spite, so that I could legitimately use a gender neutral title. But eventually, after the, I think the second or third time I sent them a GDPR right to rectification letter, they finally relented, and I think they had one of their engineers just go in and manually edit their database to do this, because like you still can't pick it on the front end.
So the UK government thinks that someone who defeated an airline company, the most spiteful piece of shit companies on earth, they think they're going to win against you now? Like, I don't think so. Well, yeah, also that shows the ridiculous lengths you're prepared to go to if you're technically a non-binary minister.
By the way, if anybody wants their title on British Airways to be MX, I know somebody who emailed them about it recently, and it only took them 4 days the second time.
Okay, well, you know, and if enough people do this, they'll be like, we cannot keep paying this engineer who's probably like £100 an hour to edit this by hand. We're going to have to change the system. And then once the system's changed, this is what the gender criticals keep doing. They make these little small wins. And so if you're non-binary and you fly in British Airways, go make a fuss today. You can waste some of their time and make them so that they don't have to waste any time in the future. Everyone wins, really, in the long run. I'm not just trying to say waste their time, obviously. But, you know, sometimes that's good. But just before I let you go, I thought we'd just have a look at this new guidance from so HESA. So this is basically a UK organisation which gives guidance to universities and stuff. And they've written, there's a whole new guidance here. I've put the link in the description, but I've got a zoomed in part here. So they've changed the guidance for sex for students. So recording sex. And this is obviously, you know, some gender critical loser in the UK government. And they've changed it so for British students only, you can only pick male, female, or did not specify. Whereas for international students, you can still pick non-binary or other or these other things. So literally within the same system, they are acknowledging the fact that people from other places could have anything. But for British students, you can't. So they're making the system specifically more complicated. This is the thing they're telling you. that it's too complicated, and they're telling other people they've got to make it more complicated. And I've actually talked to some people working on this, some IT people working on this at a university, and they're like, everyone in the whole department knows it's rubbish, because they're basically saying you have to implement this to allow non-binary people, but then you have to come up with a new extra layer on top to disallow it just for British people.
Yes, I favoring like treating British citizens less favorably than people from outside of the country is an interesting decision.
Well, that's the Conservative Party's like main goal, I think. That's what Brexit was all about. It was about saying,
Making
you know, all the Europeans that live here can go anywhere, but British people born here are stuck. So it's just, but then also they do know, and this is maybe a little cut off, let's just hide it here. Providers are not expected to verify the sex of every student, although they must make reasonable efforts to ensure that in aggregate the data for the provider is accurate. So basically, just do what you fucking want. If you're a British student, just put whatever you want.
because they're not I mean, it doesn't sound like they're checking a birth certificate.
Or genitals, or whatever they think defines. So this is where, so I am a less strong administrative annoyance than you are. The student loans company in the UK, which I had to get my loan with, they basically, they're the only organisation on the earth that still thinks that I'm male. And I said, like, I've changed all my documents. You know, I've got a new passport. I've done everything. Can you update my details with you? And they said, I said I can send you anything. And they're like, we want your original passport. You need to send it to us in the post. I was like, I'm not sending my passport to Student Loans is the most incompetent company I've ever dealt with. I'm not sending my passport to them. I'll never see it again. And I was like, can I not send a scan? Like, can I not send my deed poll or anything? So no, they won't let me update it. And so the student loans company has the wrong name, the wrong sex, the wrong address, the wrong everything. The only thing they've got correct is my birth date. And that's their problem. I mean,
Yeah, like the UK Data Protection Act, right to rectification, like, send them a letter, they have to fix it.
they do.
They get 30 days.
But, well, they've had 5 years. But the thing is, like, I tried it and I just thought, well, it's their problem. I can't be asked. No one's ever going to see my student loan thing, hopefully. Who knows? And if they do...
There is certainly something to be said for
crushing
there coming a point where it's not worth it.
Yeah. But if you're about to become an ordained minister before that, then perhaps I need to take something from your energy at destroying bullshit institutions. But yeah, thanks very much for coming on, Ryan. Is there anything you'd like to say about your case or just about yourself to plug before I let you go?
No, just please donate to my crowdfunder. My lawyers need to get paid.
Yeah, and if there's anyone even more petty than a trans person on a quest to get recognised as non-binary by the British government, it's lawyers, and they will not let you off the hook for the money ever. So, but yeah, thank you very much, Ryan. It's been great to hear from you, and hopefully you will succeed. And next time we have you on, you'll be the first non-binary person officially in the UK.
Thank you.
Bye. So that's quite cool. We're going to slam on because obviously I'm running over because I always run over. But we're about to do Graham Linehan's 5 most ridiculous moments on Twitter. And the reason is kind of unfortunate. He got banned from Twitter for the second time this week. But of course, Elon Musk, he got reinstated. She cut the article talking about him getting banned. It wasn't that interesting. He got banned for saying he would kill some LGBT activists or something, jokingly, you know. Obviously, it wasn't a real threat. So it was kind of a bullshit suspension if it was just that one thing, but obviously he breaks the terms and conditions of Twitter every single time he tweets. But, you know, it got reinstated. He'll get banned again. He'll probably be brought back again until Elon Musk gives up pretending to be a CEO. Anyway, this is why we're going for it, because we had a little discussion about it in the few hours he was banned. Everyone was like, well, remember this moment? I just thought we'd cover him. Just in case you didn't know, maybe you don't know who Graham Linehan is. Maybe this is your introduction to him. He is an Irish, he is not British. He is an Irish gender critical man who used to be a comedy writer. And I know that he's going to watch this. So here we go. Number 5. My 5th most favorite Graham Linehan moment of all time on Twitter, specifically on Twitter. So starting off a little bit light, but the dunk here was just so good. So he says, apologies, but I keep running into queer bisexuals who are in straight relationships. Like, I think most internationally, in the UK, in England, in Ireland, most bisexual people are probably in straight relationships, because when you're in a gay relationship, you receive a lot more abuse, and it's easier to be in straight relationships because most people are straight, and lots of people are encouraged to be straight, and lots of people are encouraged to stay in the closet. So that's probably why most bisexual people are in straight relationships. There's this gender critical thing where they all try and pretend that if you're bisexual and you're in a straight relationship, that you do not experience any form of anti-bisexual prejudice, and you don't really count as LGBT. And then if you're in a gay relationship and you say you're bisexual, you're a spicy gay, where you're basically someone who's scared to be. It's just biphobia rubbish. But the dunk here was from Patrick Lenton. I'm not really sure who this is, but do you know what bisexual means? To put it in terms you might understand, it means you could get divorced by someone of any gender. That's a good dunk. That's a good dunk. Number 4. So Graham here says to be silent is complicit, and here he has a picture of a teenage boy beating up a teenage girl. And this person says, is that a man? And Graham says, yeah. But the thing is, what makes this so good, lots of people are going to recognize this picture. This is Mac Beggs, who is he is now a trans man, but he was a trans boy, I think, at the time, maybe 17 years old, competing in wrestling in Texas. And this, I don't know when this happened, 4 years ago, 5 years. This is old news that, trans people know about this. He wanted to compete in the boys' wrestling, but the Texas government said, no, you can only compete as your birth gender. So he just won the girls' wrestling because he's on testosterone. Not on a, he was officially approved to compete because he wasn't doping. He had the correct level of testosterone for his body, as measured and signed off by all the doctors, just for a teenage boy. 17-year-old. So they were basically just forcing a boy to compete with the girls. But what makes this extra stupid is, it doesn't have the date on here, but I do remember when he tweeted this. This was 2 years after this thing happened. People have been talking about this for ages, and we'd seen this idiotic, oh, look, there's a man fighting a woman, this is why trans is bad. I must have said, you're an idiot, that's a trans man. The reason they are fighting a girl is because idiots like you have forced it. I must have done that literally 100 times. It's an easy dunk. And here he is, late to the party. Oh, no, it was a good one. We're going to get to the real zingers now. Number 3. This one's kind of hard to explain. Bear with me. So, someone here, Paul Cornish, says, disappointed to hear that real-life superhero Phoenix Jones has been arrested on drug charges. When I first read this, John Ronson, piece about him years ago, I remember thinking he seemed like a nice but weird bloke. So this is about a story about a man who dressed up as a superhero and helped people. And he was a drug addict as well. And John Ronson says he was nice, if weird. This is really sad that his life has turned out this way. I hope things can turn out for him. And then Graham says, how can you look Elaine in the face? It's beyond me. So I presume that Elaine is John Ronson's wife. So, like, what's going on here? So this person says, I don't get why this has upset you. He's talking about someone who used to dress up as a superhero to rescue people who has now got a drug addiction. And then Graham says, deleted that last one. That's the problem with being blocked by half the internet. I couldn't see the response and thought it was about me. So he didn't see what Paul Cornish said because Paul had blocked him. He just saw John saying, he was a nice, if weird man. It's really sad that his life has turned out this way and I hope things turn out for him. But Graham was like, he's talking about me. Oh, it's just like... And maybe if this is your introduction to Graham Linehan, you just think I'm horrible or just laughing at this poor man, but go and have a look for yourself. He is a horrible person. Number 2. So this is a classic, and this could have easily been number 1, but and you've probably seen this before, but we'll just go for it because I feel like this is, well, the second best gender critical man moment of all time. So this person says, there is no meaningful definition of woman. The only people who want to strictly define it seem to want to do so in order to use it to exclude people, which is true. But what do we know? Graham says, women might like to know that there are a significant number of woke dudes who think this is true. There is no definition of woman. Not really what they're saying. I mean, this isn't the best way to phrase it. There are definitions of woman, like the one in the dictionary, which is fine. But there's no strict definition of woman. So Avery here says, Graham, could you define chair for me in a way which includes all things which are chairs and excludes all things which aren't? And then, well, easy task for Graham here. A separate seat for one person, typically with a back and 4 legs. Happy to help, but try to Google next time. The definition of woman is there too. And then this person, Mickey D, replies with chair. Because that fits. A separate seat for one person, typically with a back and 4 legs. And this is the problem with all of these. And this is why it's such a good moment. This just got shared around so many times. It's like internet history. But this is what happened. The gender critical people just have this blind faith that everything has a strict definition. Like something like a square has a strict definition. A square is only a square if it has 4 corners, 4 edges, all the corners are the same degrees, and all of the edges are the same length. That is, if it doesn't fit those rules, it is not a square. There are no exceptions. There cannot be exceptions by definition. And everything that fits that is a square without any, there's no argument about this. And that's true of all mathematical definitions, or, that can be true of mathematical definitions. But in real life, outside of maths, there isn't anything that's true for. I mean, we have things that we know. I mean, I can say, very clearly that this is a cup of water and everyone's going to agree. But that doesn't mean I can necessarily define cup in a way which includes everything that someone might call a cup. And there will be some things on the borderline of whether you agree it counts as a cup or not. And it's the same with a chair. I mean, where does a chair start and like a sofa start? And does a sofa count as a chair? Could a table count as a chair? Like, could a model chair? Like, if you think about it, the more you think about it, the harder it gets to define. And the more you have to come up with these extra caveats. And there's always a counterexample. And that's the reality. And they just think, oh, well, of course there's a definition. Of course there's a strict definition of women that includes all cis women, excludes all trans women. And that's it. And they just stop thinking. And like when you approach this on other things in the same way, then you realize that you can't do it. And so they just don't. They just stop thinking. And it's perfect. But number 1, and the last one was good. The last one was a really good, like, explainer to the whole nonsense of gender critical. But number 1 is just perfect. So this person says, any evidence? Has there been a statistically significant increase in the number of sexual assaults in women's bathrooms subsequent to self-ID? And he says, shut up, fuck off. just a gender critical man responding to a woman asking for evidence with "shut up" is just like that's what gender critical is. No, there isn't any evidence. You don't have any evidence for that at all. Ireland, his home nation, passed self-ID in 2015, and there hasn't been statistically significant anything. There has been no issues at all with the law. Same with Argentina, which passed it over a decade ago. Same with every single country that's passed it, nearly 20 now. That's from self-ID. Sometimes, I mean, the magic of self-ID is it means lots of different things. Sometimes it means like legal recognition, like Ireland passed in 2015. Sometimes it means self-ID like we have in the UK already for women's spaces. We've always had self-ID. And no, there aren't any significant differences in sexual assault because of trans people. I mean, that's just true. That isn't an opinion. It's just statistically, factually true. But who cares? Shut up, fuck off. So there you go. That's some good Graham moments that I hope everyone enjoyed. Oh, I didn't press the button. Obviously, Graham is this week's Dickhead of the Week. There was one other thing I was going to cover about him, but we are not going to cover that now because it's kind of a waste of time. It's not that important. We're now going to get on to our Clown of the Week. So this week's Clown of the Week is another gender critical man. It's hard to say. This guy I think might be worse because he is less of a... I don't know, does he have respect? I think he's more relevant. He's making some kind of impact, whereas Graham's days of making an impact are in the past. So this is Billboard Chris, a man who I can't remember his second name, but Chris something. He is famous for wearing a billboard that says things, like being trans is mutilation or something, and then he goes and follows people home. Like there's a famous video of him following a lady home from work, demanding that she explain trans people to him, and she's just trying to go home. A cis woman, by the way, in the dark, by the way. But here is him coming out with just the stupidest attempt at an argument you've ever heard in your life. So he says, and then I need to warn you, this is chronic brain rot. This is like top tier, top shelf brain rot that might give you physical pain to read. He says, are there transgender chimpanzees? Off to a good start. We share 98.8% of their DNA. So surely there must be. I mean, bad reasoning already, but okay. Why aren't Democrats doing penile inversion surgeries on adolescent chimps to improve their quality of life? Oh, chimpanzees don't have any money, so none of them are transgender. Fucking hell. He obviously thought this was a dunk. 3,000 people like this. Just so painfully stupid. I almost feel embarrassed addressing this. Do you think that we're doing other healthcare procedures on chimps? I mean, do you, do we say, oh, are we doing fillings on chimps? Adolescent chimps whose teeth are slightly rotten, are they getting tooth caps to improve their quality of life? Oh no, chimpanzees don't have any money, so none of them have cavities. What is this argument? It's so fucking stupid. Oh yeah, why aren't chimps paying for depression medication? Therefore chimps can't get depressed. Therefore, because we share most of our DNA with them, even though quite important differences, that means humans can't be depressed. What are you talking about? It's just so chronically stupid. And why the Democrats? The Democrats are rubbish for trans rights, really. I mean, they're better than the Republicans, but this the science that shows people are trans. And this guy is one of the I think he's Canadian. Yeah, he is. He's got a Canadian flag. I mean, he's got an American flag too, but I think he is Canadian. This is like Canada's best gender critical man, like the biggest thinker. I mean, Meghan Murphy is probably their biggest thinker, and Meghan Murphy doesn't like this dude because he's not got a good vibe around women, we could say. Yeah, and this is it. This is their intellectual powerhouse showing off what he has to offer. This is the reason there's no such thing as any medical condition is because we don't do the same medical treatment on chimpanzees, and the reason we don't do it is because they don't have money. We'll move on to some more brain rot of the week. I still haven't had time to record a brain rot of the week theme. We will have that. Imagine I just pressed the brain rot of the week button and everyone was like, whoa, it's the best button. We're going to do a what the fuck instead, because this next one is a bit of a what the fuck. So here is someone replying to Julie Bindel, and she says, I'm a woman in my 40s, not capitulating to anything, just not remotely bothered if trans people want to be trans people, because I think human beings have a right to live how they choose. Fair? I think that's quite okay. I mean, it's basically, I'm not an idiot and I'm not a dickhead who meddles in other people's lives, so go away. But then we have this reply, which is also going to, if you have any brain left and you haven't melted already, good luck. So Lala here says, that's great. So when you are in the ladies' room and one has to wash his penis in front of you, you won't mind. Add a grandchild who is with you is what it is. This is a satisfying ratio here. 2,500 fights. The thing, well, I mean, I usually presume when you get anonymous shitheads, gender critical people, that they're men. I don't know what's worse here. Either this is a woman who thinks that men wash their penises in the men's toilet. Who thinks that men wash their penises in public toilets. Or this is a man who washes his penis in public toilets. Well, I mean, not necessarily something I'd want to see, someone washing their genitals in the sink of a public toilet, but like, I guess if it's dirty and you clean up after yourself. It's just one of these gender critical things where they just make up something ridiculous that they hope triggers a disgust response. It's like, imagine yourself with your grandchild and there's someone washing their penis in front of you. Is that what you want? Is that what you want to see? You want to see someone washing their penis? And you're like, ugh, no, that sounds horrible. Of course, I'll support you. Deny trans people their right to healthcare. Ridiculous. Anyway, we're going to move on. We're going to spend ages on this one because we still have a couple of things to go. So the first thing we have to... Right. We're doing a little trilogy of Katie news here. Sorry if this is a bit self-indulgent, but I wanted to cover all of these points in case you follow me and you wanted to talk about them. First thing is, someone has hacked the line. So I'm on several channels on YouTube. I'm obviously on this one. Please subscribe to my channel. But I also do the Transatlantic Call-In show on The Line, and I've also done some of the other shows on there. The Line is a really great channel, and we're expanding it. We're soon going to have one show every day of the week. We cover discussions about politics and LGBT issues and religion. And, oh, hello, Poppy. But we were just about to hit 90,000 subscribers. And it's hosted, it's owned by Jimmy Snow, who himself has something like 500,000 subscribers. Like, big YouTube channels, much bigger than my own one. And someone's hacked them and replaced them with SpaceX stuff, which then got banned for impersonating SpaceX. So both channels, both Jimmy's channel and The Line, are gone temporarily. I have some faith that they will come back. Poppy, don't do that, please. Come on. She's being a nuisance. I have some faith they'll come back. Please don't unsubscribe if you see some SpaceX bullshit in your inbox and you wonder why you subscribe to it. and it's got around 80 something thousand subscribers. That's the line. This is stressful for us because obviously we're making a big show of it, but this is really stressful for Jimmy because these channels that they've just deleted of his, I think it's all gone now. Well, yeah, I'm hoping it's all recoverable, but it's currently not on the internet. This is his entire living and everything he's worked to create. So, you know, bear with us. We'll be back. Second thing I wanted to cover about me, sorry everyone, is this. So Talk TV recently had me on. Talk TV's like I think it is a TV channel. It's definitely a radio station as well. I think. I'm not really sure. They had me on, and it is kind of right wing. And they basically had me on to talk. This is kind of legit. They had two cis presenters, a man and a woman, so that's already better than many. But they got on two trans people to discuss this, and they wanted to talk about Bud Light and the Dylan Mulvaney thing. The presenters, like the staff behind the scenes, were quite nice. The presenters, I don't know if you watched it or not, but they said some dubious things, but they came across to me as people who didn't really care about trans people, kind of just a bit like, whatever, said a few things that are dumb, but they didn't, like, these people don't want to ruin my life. I think they are live and let live people who are just a bit uninformed, basically. That was my vibe, and I would happily talk to them again, and I don't mind people like this at all. I know that sometimes people like that say things and you're like, oh, I don't like this at all. That's your reaction. That's fine. I'm used to people saying crude things. And if someone is crude and willing to learn, like they at one point said something about Leah Thomas. They're like, oh, Leah Thomas has just beaten all these swim records. And I was like, oh, well, she actually only beat one. And it was beaten this year by a cis woman. And they were like, oh, okay, thanks. And like this dude said something. And the other person on with me was like, oh, it's kind of transphobic. And he was like, why? And then they said, and he was like, oh, okay. So, kind of good vibes. But, and I don't know if you saw this on another one of my channels, I went on Talk Heathen, and I had this problem. I'm going to show you a little bit of this, but this is kind of distressing, so I'm not going to show much. Oh, fucking hell, it's been seen by 3.4 million people. Half a million people have watched this clip. There was a software error and my voice got down-pitched. I'm just going to show you a bit so you can hear what it sounds like. You can go and watch the whole thing if you like, but...
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes brands do bad adverts, and I would just watch, a truck advert with Steak Khan and be like, oh, okay, I'm not buying their trucks. I don't know.
It's just... I hope that you can tell the difference between me talking now and me talking there. I mean, to me, this sounds like horrific. But maybe some people don't notice. What I guess there's two things that stress me out about this. One is that 500,000 people have seen me with this voice, and it's not how I sound, and that's kind of horrible. And it's distressing on like a personal level because of gender dysphoria stuff. I don't want to sound like that. I've spent a lot of effort into changing my voice to be more how I see it in my mind, and it's not nice to see this. But also I'm just a bit stressed about, the people who watch this. I'm hoping that the people who watch this are similar to the hosts. And they're like, I don't know anything about trans people. I don't really care. If they want to do their thing, then they can do their thing. And they're like, well, and this, like, both their arguments was kind of, why the hell did Bud Light pick Dylan Mulvaney? Because, like, that's not the audience for a beer. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, trans people drink beer too, but kind of fair enough. It's not like the ideal match made in heaven partnership in a way that, Dylan's hilarious and I actually think she's great, but and I think it's fine that Bud are reaching out to court different audiences and stuff. I think anyone offended by it is a complete dickhead, but I can at least understand the argument. Why did they go with that? And that's kind of all they were saying. And maybe there are other people watching and they heard two trans people go, and I think we both did a decent job. We're both like, well, yeah, fair, but like, why does anyone care? And that's kind of what the host said too. But then they might get this, I don't know, maybe I'm just being transphobic myself, but I just don't want people hearing me like that. I don't know. Whatever. Garbage. But there was quite a thing. I did reply to this, and quite a lot of people were wondering if Talk TV edited it themselves. I don't think they did, and the reason I think that is because, and I've written this on Twitter and clarified, and I wrote to some journalists who contacted me. I had this once before, and I think it's a combination of sampling rates. I'm surprised it doesn't happen more. What I will say is, I think that my voice sounds obviously down-pitched, and I think if a cis woman came on and the sound check guys heard her talk and she sounded like that they would be like, something's wrong with the audio, we need to fix it, and then I would have done something. But I think, speculating, that they just were like, oh, trans women have deep voices, whatever, we'll just let it go ahead. I don't know, because the people at Talk Heathen also didn't notice, and I really respect the people at the ACA, the tech people are great, and they seem to not notice either, and they knew what I sound like, so maybe it's just one of these things only really obvious to me, and you're all like, Katie, you sound exactly the same, and whatever. I hope it doesn't happen again. I think I know what the problem is now. I think I can fix it. We'll see. But now you know, I don't think it was intentional. I don't think it was any of the people involved in this' fault. I don't think it was my fault either. I think it was because I've used exact same setup here, like now, all of the same components, and it should sound fine to you guys. So I think it's probably some software they used interacting with some software I used. Anyway, now you know. Last thing I wanted to say very quickly of my news is I just got featured in Women in Leadership magazine, which is pretty cool. You can see it here for free. You can read the whole magazine. Not that exciting, but you can see my recommendations of things to watch. Here I am. I cover some things. I won't spoiler it now. You should go and watch you should go and read the magazine for free. Link is in the description. I'm just quite proud of it, so that's cool. But I didn't want to end on this, and the reason, I've got one more piece of news to cover, so please do stick around for one more thing, because it is important. I just wanted to cover this last, so it was in people's minds, so that we will go away and do something about it. So we are going to talk a little bit more about the Equality and Human Rights Commission, the EHRC in the UK. So a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how... sorry, one sec. We talked about how the EHRC had written a letter to the government basically saying we should take away trans people's human rights. And it's distressing. We did a huge petition. We slammed through 100,000 signatures in like 4 days. Amazing. Loads of people have written to their MPs. Amazing. We need to keep up this energy. So first, we're just going to look at this. The EHRC is struggling. It's failing internally. It's a disaster. The whole organization is dead. Labour, when they take over, either going to have to completely strip it and start again, or they're going to have to get rid of it because it's broken now. Beyond just a little bit. So this is a story from Vice, an exclusive story, saying 7 senior officials have quit the Equality and Human Rights Commission because of concerns over transphobia. Like, that's a lot of people to quit from. This isn't a huge it's a fairly big organization, but it's not. This is a big deal. So it says here, senior officials, including a board member, have recently quit the EHRC due to the transphobic direction of the organization. Insiders at the EHRC have described the 7 exits as a massive resignations, who said that some took place as recently as this week, and they're expecting many more over the next few months. Thank you very much for the super chats, everyone. So, yeah, and so this is quite a big deal. The EHRC is crumbling, and I think it's important to point this out. If you're writing to your MP, you can say, this change that the EHRC has proposed will ruin the life of me as a trans person, or my friend who is a trans person, or my child who is a trans person, or even just my 6th favorite YouTuber, Katie Montgomery, or whatever, I don't know. You can, say that, but also you can say the EHRC is failing at its duties, and multiple respected people who have spent their lives on human rights have quit from it because of the direction it's taken. This organization doesn't deserve respect. It doesn't have any credibility anymore. and you can point that out. So less than one, and this is an important point, less than 1 year ago, Vice World News exposed documents that were exclusively shared with us, which outlined plans to prevent trans people from being able to use single-sex spaces. At the time, EHRC bosses denied that they were real and said the plans were not being considered. However, last week, the EHRC provided advice to the government on how to prevent trans people from entering single-sex spaces, such as changing rooms, exactly as mentioned in those leaked plans. It's a key part of the gender critical strategy is to lie constantly about everything. This has been, other than the raw terror, the next worst part of, this garbage is them just saying, hey, you know what you've been accusing us of? Literally, since the start of the gender critical movement, that we want to ban trans women from women's spaces, that we've been denying literally the entire way. Well, it's true. And it's been true the entire time. Like, so many gender critical people have just lied to my face. Looked me in the eye. Well, some of them have looked me in the eye on video call. Not many. Some have. Some I've talked to personally. Some I've talked to in, Twitter DMs, Twitter discussions, on discussion shows. And they've all just said, we don't want to ban people like you, Katie. And they fucking did. And they've been planning for it this whole time. And then you say to them, you lied to me. And they're like, no, I didn't. This is what I've always wanted. Like, fuck off. And it's the same here. And it's just part of it. And the reason is they have to do it. There's incremental. As they build more hatred for trans people in the media, they can do more aggressive pushes. And we need to tell them this has now gone too far. So they all spoke on condition of anonymity due to fear of backlash from their employer for speaking out. So these are people who still work there. When asked if they thought the EHRC was being taken in a transphobic direction, one current staff member who is staying in their position said, yes, I definitely think so. That is quite clear. They added, I think the EHRC is having a really, really damaging impact right now. It is sending a strong message to trans people that trans rights don't matter. It all feels politically motivated, and I think that's clear from the tone of some of the things that the EHRC is saying publicly. Another staff member said, these are big senior people. Oh, gosh, sorry. That's what happened when you're... This is what happens when your half-an-hour episodes go on for an hour and a half. You need to drink more water. These are big senior people who have committed their lives and careers to protecting human rights and promoting diversity. They don't want to be attached to this mess. A third staff member added, it is not difficult to draw a line between the letter that was sent by the Commission to the government and employers leaving. People have been involved in current publications and have been very unhappy. They've been expressing their discomfort over a while, so clearly now enough is enough. There's been no effort made to look for evidence on any real-life issues in relation to the policy of rights between cis women and trans people. And it just seems to be the case of going full steam ahead without considering any evidence. And I think the Commission is inflaming a culture war. Like, we knew this was happening. You were right. If you thought this is what is happening, this is what has been happening. You've been right. You've read this right. They've been gaslighting us this whole time. They've been lying to other people in order to get their bullshit things to pass. And on that theme, one of the things we've been saying is gender criticals want to ban trans people from public life. And the whole time they've been, no, we don't want to do that. Oh, we just have concerns about men. No, they want to ban all trans people in public life. And one of the clearest things, they always say, oh no, we don't have an issue with trans people. We just have an issue with males, people with a male soul or whatever. And that doesn't include trans men. And then, so people will say, well, so what you're saying is with the new EHRC guidance, we could be in a situation where this guy is legally required to use the women's toilets. Like, this is everyone's done this. If you've even thought about this for 3 seconds, you've been like, what about guys like this guy? But here is Sex Matters, who I think are probably one of the most... They're probably like the architects behind this. This is Helen Joyce and Mayor Forstater and Emma Hilton and others. Maybe James Estes, I don't know. There's a lot of A and B and C tier gender criticals involved in this. And they've been meeting with, they're involved with LGBT Alliance as well, and they've been meeting with the EHRC, as we've seen in leaked documents. And they're very much talking about it as, at least to me, in my opinion, it feels like they're saying, oh, this is our amendment. Hey guys, this is what we are proposing. So here is Sex Matters responding to this point. They say, question, would it mean that women are forced to share single-sex services with trans man? Can't even bring yourself to say that made-up word where you've stuck the two things together is real. Anyway, who look just like men? No. The Equality Act allows for lawful gender assignment discrimination in the provision of single-sex services. So basically, this guy would be banned from the men's and the women's facilities. Trans people would be banned from public life. They're just fucking saying it out loud. This is just on their Twitter. They're just proud of this. It's disgusting. And this is what they've always been doing. Ever since Sex Matters founded, this has been their goal. Ever since the people who founded Sex Matters had become gender critical, that has been their goal. And they've been lying about it the whole time. This was one of J.K. Rowling's... J.K. Rowling supports this organization. This is one of her key arguments in her garbage essay. Oh, I don't have a issue with trans people because actually I support trans men to use women's facilities. No, you don't. You're a lying piece of shit. There you go. They're just saying it. So we need to write to our MPs. I'm going to arrange a video. I think I might do it on Sunday. I haven't quite planned when to do it yet, but where we can all sit down, and I said about this last week, we'll all sit down together, if you like, and write letters to our MP as a team. We'll have good spirits. We'll just get on and smash through it and make a difference. But last, I'd just like to point this out. I'm not sure how sensible this is, but I'm going to do it. This is a DM that I got sent from the EHRC account. This is actually them. So I posted an article about them on the website, and I had a picture of Baroness. Yeah, fucking Baroness is the one, unelected leech on society who has hereditary power, is one of the people threatening to take away human rights I have today. I had a picture of her on the website, and they didn't like that. So they sent me this DM. Hey, Katie, it has come to our attention that you are using our logo and image of our chairwoman on your website. We politely ask you to remove these as you do not have our permission. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss the concerns you have about our work directly. I accepted it one time, but Twitter is busted because Elon Musk is in charge, so it says accepted 3 times. This is the response I wrote to them. And so they sent this on the 8th of April, so it's been over a week, and they haven't replied. So yeah, it's been 9 days. I said, hello. The response you can tell your boss is, I would be happy to take down the picture if Baroness Faulkner and the EHRC would publicly commit to not taking away trans people's human rights, the rights I have today, that I need to live a normal and safe life. More than happy to discuss further. I think that's a good reply. It's true. I also said, but mate, they have you working on Easter Saturday sending Twitter DMs to random LGBT people. I understand that the EHRC used to be a respectable place to work, and you probably applied with the hope of helping out a good cause, but you can see what they're doing. They are trying to make it so normal, boring, everyday women like me are banned from public spaces just because we were born different. Surely you don't want to be part of this. Don't be a cog in the machine that is taking us slowly towards authoritarian fascism. They won't stop at trans people. Please just think about it. They need people to just follow orders for this to work. Didn't get a reply. Followed up with them a week later, saying, hello, has there been any feedback on this from your fascist boss? This is a bit sneaky. I'm just being cheeky here. I'm not making the claim that any of the bosses at the EHRC are fascists. This is a little between pals, the social media person and me. Just clarifying that. And then I waited a few more days and I said, was your last social media person one of those who walked out over how anti-human rights the EHRC is now? Have they hired a new person yet? Don't know. Maybe they haven't. Maybe the person saw this and was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going. If you were, if that did happen, I don't think that did happen, but if it did, even if you need to be super anonymous, 100% confidential, just for my own personal gratification, please just send me a sign. Yeah, so basically, fuck the EHRC. Let's write to our MPs. Let's not have this happen because it will ruin the life of every trans person you've ever met in the UK. Blech. Sorry to end on a negative. Just remember the Glenna moments. They were good moments. Think of the brain rot. A good one I cut out this week was we had a rerun of Adult Human Chicken, if anyone remembers that. Zinger of a moment where someone said that the definition of a hen was adult human chicken. Anyway, it's been an okay week. I do suspect next week the government will probably respond to the EHRC letter and it will be stressful again. We'll have another news cycle and we'll all have a little bit of a panic. Just be ready for it. It doesn't mean anything yet. They're not going to get anything through without a big fight, and we're all going to write to our MP this weekend, hopefully. Look out on my YouTube channel for the upcoming video, and you can come hang out. We can all have a drink and stuff and a snack, bring some popcorn, and we'll write a letter. It won't be much work. It's not going to be a burden. We'll get through it together. And yeah, so thanks for sticking around for this episode. I hope you enjoyed the guest. I hope you enjoyed all of the things, and we will see you next week. Same time as always, 9 p.m. UK time. Mondays. It should be good, and hopefully the line will be back this week because we're going to do Transatlantic on Thursday. Maybe on this channel. We'll see. Bye, everyone. Thank you.